Every member of our team is a catalyst. They're experts at what they do.
You're not really in the business of whatever it is, XYZ that you're doing. You're actually in the results business.
It's going to be super cool. All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. So one of the rules that we like to teach our coaching clients is that you never want to be the smartest one in the room. And you want to be able to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you are in the roles that you're hiring for. And there's no exception with my guest today. He's our director of community. In fact, he probably wears many hats. We could call him our director of retention, and so forth. He really does a lot. Walker Renfrow is a gentleman with many, many different talents, but one of the beautiful things about Walker is he's constantly innovating, looking for ideas. He sees a problem, and then he creates these ways to solve it that are very unique. It's not like there's a book to do some of the stuff that Walker has done. You're not going to hear what we're talking about anywhere else. You're not going to read it anywhere else. It comes from real world experience and data and testing and tweaking and putting our ear to the ground and listening to our clients and seeing how they're responding and so forth. And so what we're going to be talking about today is going to be the first time many of you have heard this when it comes to community, when it comes to retention and so forth. So without further ado, Walker, buddy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles. That was a very generous introduction, and hopefully what I have to say lives up to what you just said. So appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's awesome watching you work. You're kind of like this artist, right? And I know you're a singer in your other worlds, an artist in your personal world, but you are an artist also when it comes to work, because the way that you look at something and how you approach it and solve it, that does have very much of that creative element to it. We talk about this in the age of AI, that the advantage of the people in today's day and age is not going to be the people who have all the answers. It's going to be the people that know to ask the questions that other people don't know how to ask. And that's where that advantage is. And that's one of your zones of genius, is being able to look at things and ask different questions. What if we did this? Or here's this problem, and how can we do this? And so forth. So kudos.
I appreciate that.
Let's talk about retention, right?
Yes.
So I'm just going to open that up. Let's talk about retention, and I'm going to hand the mic to you. And I want to talk about the problem that you saw and maybe some of the different ways that you tried to resolve it that didn't work, and then what you ultimately ended up creating that is working.
Yes.
And share some of those results.
Yes. So love the question. And I'm going to tie it back to what you said about being in the age of AI and it not being about having the right answers, but about asking the right questions. Maybe you've heard Charles say that before. Maybe you want to write it down, but that I believe that wholeheartedly. And I've always been a lover of questions. And I think that for all those listening who you're a business owner, you're wanting to tackle retention as well, retaining those clients, we want you to take that same approach. So how I like to think of it is really thinking about first principles. Whenever I approach a problem, I want to start from the very ground zero, which is asking, what is this thing? So when we're looking at client retention, it might sound caveman simple, but we're going to start there. Client retention is keeping the clients that you sell. Very, very simple. And Charles talks all the time about the power of MRR, monthly recurring revenue, and just how much greater your company can grow if you take advantage of that MRR engine to grow your company exponentially. We talk about sales, and the sales seat is very sexy. You're closing deals left and right. It feels really good. But if you are selling into a leaky bucket, then you have put a ceiling on your MRR machine. And we want all of those listening, whether you're one of our clients, whether you're a member of our community, whether you're just a listener, we want that same for you to take advantage of that MRR engine. And so you have the two sides of the coin, right? You have sales, or first of all, you have leads coming in that you then sell, your growth engine. But what about your service? What about your delivery? How are you retaining those clients and giving them an optimal experience? So I'm sure we're going to cover a multitude of ways to do that during this call, but that really is that two-sided coin of retention is the flip side of sales. And how are you going to maximize your MRR engine to grow a business that has sustainable, predictable growth, as we like to teach here.
Got it. In the beginning, so we talk about how you found a problem, right? So the problem was, okay, the retention wasn't high enough, right? And maybe it goes a little bit deeper, like maybe that's actually the symptom, right? And sometimes symptoms and problems they're labeled incorrectly, right? Because
Right.
people not staying long enough. I mean, our retention by industry standards standpoint, our retention is far greater than, most of the other companies in the industry, if not everyone else in the industry. But even still, just because we're leading that doesn't mean that we're happy. So
Right.
yeah, so the symptom is we're losing people faster than we thought they otherwise should, that we should be keeping them longer. Okay.
Right.
And then the problem was what?
So that is a great question. And I don't want anyone here to think that they have the answer. Because the truth is, you as a founder, you do not have the answer. Your clients have the answer. And those of you who are listening, who do the best job at listening to your clients, you're the ones who are going to win in this category, is because exactly what Charles said, retention, or the lack thereof, we might call it churn, that really is a symptom. And what you're going to find is there are a host of reasons for why that might be. And really, it's your ability to listen to your clients deeply and regularly. And again, I'm sure we'll talk about ways to do that. We can jump into, having a system for feedback. But I really love what you said, Charles, about churn being a symptom. And one thing we really preach here at Predictable Profits is the idea of keeping a scorecard. And maybe you've heard the quote that you have to, what you track then grows.
Yeah.
Because you're realizing that there's a problem. You cannot fly blind in this area. And so if there's anyone here who has, you don't even know the first place to start with how to tackle client retention, we'd encourage you just start tracking how many clients leave just on a weekly basis. Did 0 leave? Did 1 leave? Did 2? And over time, you're going to see trends if you listen to your clients and implement some feedback systems. So I'll give you an example of what we do here at Predictable Profits. So,
And actually, before you tell them what we did do, let's start with what didn't work, right? Because what
yes.
didn't work initially was sending out surveys. We thought that, right?
Yes, I'm glad you bring that up. Many of you have heard of NPS surveys, and this is something that we still encourage people to do. It's something that is a data point that is useful to have in your business. The problem is when it's the only mechanism you have for trying to tackle retention. So of course, your NPS survey, it's just going to be one question. We keep ours anonymous, which is 0 out of 10. How likely are you to recommend Predictable Profits to a friend or colleague? And our members echo the same sentiment. These don't get very high reply rates. And to a degree, that's okay. Especially if your form is not anonymous, this is a perfect opportunity to signal, hey, would you be willing to leave us a Google review? Would you be willing to refer us to a friend or colleague? You indicated 9 or 10. We'd love to, offer this opportunity to somebody else. So it can flag areas of opportunity. But Charles mentioned something important, which is that it does not work if that is the only spoke in your wheel. And the true answer is that you actually need to go deeper. Yes, have an NPS survey. It's important to get a pulse on your client satisfaction. But what we found is that client interviews, we do ours on a quarterly basis, that was actually the secret weapon and has actually become really a compass for how we run our business, not in a haphazard whiplash way, but in a way where every quarter, when we're doing our quarterly planning, we look at our scorecard, we look at what metrics are red, that defines our constraints. We're setting our quarterly goals based on constraints. But also one thing we're looking at along with the scorecard is that quarterly feedback, because the degree to which you listen to your clients and deliver the value that they're asking for, that's going to determine your growth and your retention. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
That is a very, very valid point.
It's interesting because the other thing that you can't do, and we've seen this with our clients and we experienced it ourselves, is if you have a project manager and you're like, well, it's just easier if we ask the project manager these questions and, or even try to get the project manager to ask the client, so what would you think? Inherently, you get different answers. So we had a coach one time who we would go to him and we did this with all our coaches, would say, we'll go through all of the clients on the roster that they were managing and would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, where do you think they sit right now? And on this one particular case, we said, where do you think you sit? And I remember this response like it was yesterday. And he said, on a scale of 1 to 10, 11, 100, really. I mean, everything is going fantastic.
Right.
And by that evening, I got a message from this client that he's unhappy and he's looking at churn. And when I spoke to him, it was just some sort of misunderstanding. But at the end of the day, that was the problem. There was a disconnect between the coach and what he thought was actually going on. People don't like conflict, inevitably, right? So if you're dealing with somebody and you have a relationship with somebody and you like them and you ask them point blank, like, give me criticism, and people don't like conflict. Walker, you're a perfect example of that. I
Yes.
know how much you love conflict, right?
That's exactly right. I am a prime example of that.
Yeah. But I mean, like for you, I know that even when, and you and I have a great relationship and you know that you could tell me anything. And I like to create this environment where I encourage you to give me constructive feedback. And even still, when you go to give me constructive feedback, you squirm it in your seat a little bit. And we have a relationship and I like to call you a friend, right? So it's more than an employer-employee relationship. I like to call you a friend and we do have that stuff. I mean, it was great. We flew private together. We've, shared meals together. Like we've done so many wonderful things together. So we
Yes,
have
sir.
bridged that gap between, professional and personal, but even still, it makes you that uncomfortable
Right.
to give me that feedback. So now imagine having that relationship with somebody that you don't have that close of a bond. And now you get even feedback. It's very uncomfortable. So by creating a bridge, by Walker going in and some of my own personal clients, Mark will jump into a call. He'll be like, hey, Charlie, just bounce for a quick 5 minutes and I'll ping you on Slack when it's time to return. I'll bounce for 5 minutes. Walker will jump in on a call and he'll always get feedback that I've never heard myself. My clients wouldn't tell me because we have such great relationships. But then he'll come back and we'll make the program that much better, that much better, that much better, that much better. You have to create this obsession about your product and your service. And even though you might think it's world-class and the best in the world, you have to create this obsession that it's never going to be perfect. And that in today's evolving world of things moving faster than ever, the worst thing that you can do is be complacent and assume that it doesn't have to evolve and it doesn't have to change.
What you don't know, Charles, is that when I kick you off that call to give the juicy feedback, I actually threaten the clients, and that's why they tell me all the good stuff. No, I'm kidding. But think about it. If you are trying to ask your project manager, who you think has the best boots on the ground pulse of how your clients are doing, think for a minute what the incentives are in that dynamic. Your project manager wants to keep their job.
Yeah.
They want to paint a rosy picture that the clients are doing well. So really your incentives are misaligned. We have tons of metrics that we track on our scorecard, all of which follow a simple traffic light system of being red, yellow, or green.
Yep.
And we do the same thing with red, yellow, or green clients. And for us, it has to do with risk of leaving. So our benchmark that we set is actually, we want 75% of our clients to be green. We want 20% of our clients to be yellow, and we want 5% of our clients to be red. And so I know some of you are thinking, wait a minute, shouldn't it be 0 clients in red? And the answer is no. And that is on purpose. We are wanting to align incentives for the result that we want. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the result.
Billy Munger.
Exactly. Likely there is somebody who's a client of yours right now. If you're listening, I can almost guarantee it. You have some yellow people, you have some red people. It's not about having 0% on those metrics. It's about being truthful in those metrics. So that's something that I'm held accountable to. That's something that we are accountable to as a team. And so by aligning those metrics, I am able to jump on those calls. Like Charles said, I jump in once a quarter with each of our clients. I'm taking them through one question per aspect of our program. I'm giving them a chance to rate it from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best possible, 0 the worst possible, 5 is neutral, and then a chance to elaborate. And that scale from 0 to 10 averaged across all of our clients, well, that's going to give us a unique score per each element of our program. But another great advantage of living in the age of AI is that massive sum of qualitative data that you have of people inputting jibber jabber into a long form. Well, actually, we can do something with that in today's age. We can generate customer avatars, and we can generate per our client tier what the core pain points are, what the scores are, how we need to pivot, generate ideas for how to overcome those problems. And like I said before, that has dramatically changed our business to have that be our compass for how can we serve our clients in the best way possible.
You're right. And one of the things that we did change is a lot of people almost create these reactive type of analytics, so to speak, when it comes to churn and retention. And what we do is we actually have predictive analytics. So we know before somebody even churns now, we know when things become cautionary, and then we have a protocol for what needs to happen in order to jump right in and turn those around. So I want you to think about that as our listeners right now. When it comes to retention and churn, is yours predictive or reactive? And so let's talk about this, Walker.
Yeah.
About, for us, we didn't know what was going to be predictive, right? We tested different things, and we wanted to see, was there correlation or causation, and we tested. And now we've really boiled it down to a few really, really core metrics. And those are all behavioral based metrics as well. So we have the surveys, which are also really important, but then you've created behavioral based metrics and behavioral based sort of KPIs. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I do.
And this is all your zone of genius. I'm not going to take credit for your zone of genius, right?
One example we like to give all the time when we talk about predictive analytics versus reactive, the obvious example is with sales, and a good example is revenue. Revenue is actually a lagging metric. And the reason is because once you find out what your revenue is, well, the month has already happened. And more importantly, all the activity that caused that revenue to happen has already occurred. So if revenue is a lagging metric, well, what are the predictive metrics? Well, that's all the activities. So that's leads coming in top of funnel. That's, how many leads are in each stage of the pipeline, number of discovery calls, number of closing calls. If you have a pulse on those sort of things, well, those are actually the predictive analytics that tell you, oh, well, actually, we've had a lot more discovery calls and a lot more closing calls this month. Chances are our revenue will be trending up as well. Mm-hmm. The same thing applies when you're looking at retention, but sometimes you just have to get creative on what those predictive analytics are. When you have your service or your delivery, it's not going to look like discovery calls and closing calls. Well, what is it going to look like? In our case, our quarterly feedback is a big part of that pulse. But more importantly, we have a tab on our scorecard that is a client scorecard. This is where I mentioned the red, yellow, green. But what makes somebody red, yellow, or green? Well, at first it was a gut check. We did just have a meeting with the coaches, paired with that feedback, of course. And we would just set them based on gut with red, yellow, green. This was just the very primitive first iteration of, hey, we need to get something on paper. Let's start somewhere. And there is data and a gut feel. And if you have nowhere to start, start there. But you need to go further than that. And you need to ask the question, how can I make this more quantitative? And how we did this is we realized through feedback, through talking to our clients, that there are actually 3 pillars that, at least for our members, we run a group coaching program, we run an online community. For us, it was coaching, accountability, and community. And so really what that means, the first pillar of coaching, well, that metric is attendance. We have 2 sessions per week that, I know I'm a little biased, but they're a blast. People having breakthroughs left and right. So just got to give a little mention to both the board of director sessions and the launchpad sessions. They are truly a blast. I know we look forward to them every week, and our members do as well.
They're fun when you leave the session and you get more energy leaving the session than you do when you started the session.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. But we do track attendance for those. And that is really, really important to us. I mean, we can actually see the health of a client over time as we track their rate of attendance. So that's the first pillar is coaching. And for us, that metric is attendance. When we look at accountability, well, our program is about implementing their core curriculum roadmap. We have an 8-course roadmap that all of our members go through to achieve sustainable growth in their business. And, to a large degree, they have the community and they have us. So there's no way they're going to slip through the cracks. But to a large degree, it is on you as a founder to implement these tactics. We're going to give you the tools, we're going to give you the community, and we're going to help you along this path. But ultimately, we need to keep you accountable to being the best founder you can be. And what that means is implementing yourself, but also empowering your team to implement. Yeah. And so luckily, we have those analytics in our online community of who is implementing what curriculum. But that is, for us, the third pillar that is so important and predictive of the health of a client within our community. And like I said, coaching, accountability, and community. Our third pillar is community. We host our community in Circle. We have, like I mentioned, our board of directors, our launchpad, and we even have a free tier we call Essentials. But within these tiers, their involvement in the community is highly correlated with their health as a client and what makes them red, yellow, or green. Yep. And luckily, we have incredible analytics that give us insight into people's activity within the community. And again, I'm biased, but just seeing some of the magic that occurs in there of, yes, sometimes you see it's a score out of 10, how involved are they in the community? But what that really looks like on the ground floor is people asking questions throughout the week. Sometimes it's just very analytical. They need a straightforward answer. Other times people are being vulnerable and sharing what's not working in their business. And it's a chance for other people in the community to huddle around and say, hey, I've been through the same thing too. This worked, this didn't. Maybe you should try this. So the point I'm really getting at is that these 3 pillars of coaching, accountability, and community, they are what make our client health predictive. But beyond just the metrics, it really is the heartbeat of our program. Like dull metrics, but behind the scenes, all of those dull metrics communicate a robust experience that's happening in the background. And to have that visibility numbers wise lets us know to what degree things are thriving.
So Walker, now I'm going to challenge you right now.
Please.
One thing that I want to mention is what's unique about our company is every member of the company is a catalyst for growth. In other words, you could talk to any one of the members of our team and they can contribute because we don't coach on things that we don't have experience in, right? So we eat our own pudding. And so every member of our team is a catalyst. They're experts at what they do. So Walker is a catalyst, and Walker shows up in our board of directors sessions. People have a question. They talk to Walker. Walker goes, this is what I've tested. This is what I do. Here's what I would recommend you do for your own business. So if we just pull a random example out there, if we pull, let's say we pull a B2B services company, right? Let's say an agency. Let's say an agency owner is listening right now and they're saying, okay, Walker, I get it. I see what you're doing in terms of coaching. How would I start that now for me being an agency, I get what you're saying. I know I got to do predictive. I heard what you said. I can put somebody to do the interviews. That part is easy, but then the predictive behaviors, what are some of those predictive behaviors that I should be looking for as an agency owner? What was some of the advice that you would give?
Yeah, that is a terrific question. And I think I'll have to go back to the scorecard on this. Charles likes to give the analogy of a cruise ship captain. This person is piloting an enormous ship, but they're not going to be able to plot the course if they are in the basement shoveling coal. They need a team that can support them, and they need to have a reliable dashboard in front of them to know whether or not they're on the right course or heading toward danger. And so if you are just getting started, Charles likes to say, if something is worth doing at all, it's worth doing poorly at first. And I've said before, maybe you've heard our lovely COO on one of these podcasts before, Joe, but he likes to say, if something is worth doing at all, it's worth doing in a spreadsheet first. If you are a B2B service, if you are an agency listening and you don't know where to start, I would start with the simplest spreadsheet ever. And all it is, in one column, you have a list of all the names of your clients. And in the next column, you have red, yellow, or green. And if you meet around that spreadsheet on a weekly basis with your leadership teams and whatever stakeholders need to be involved, we guarantee that you are going to see momentum because you are putting eyeballs on a situation that maybe has been in the dark for who knows how long.
Yeah.
And if that's you, I want you to kind of ask yourself, how long has it been in the dark? And what is the cost of remaining the same and not flicking the light on? If you knew it was as simple as a spreadsheet with the client names and the temperatures. Now, of course, we're not going to end there. And like Charles said, there's activities that go on behind the scenes. One metric that I'm accountable to is number of touch points throughout the week. And I like to give a mix of red, yellows, and greens. You might say, why wouldn't I just reach out to just the reds, or maybe a few yellows as well? Well, you also want to encourage your green folks. You want to give them a dopamine hit as well and say, hey, just pop in and say, hey, I really appreciate you showing up, being such a great client for XYZ. A lot of times that goes a long way. But reporting that metric of touch points, are you reaching out to your clients and is it strategic?
Yeah.
Reaching out to the reds, reaching out to the yellows, reaching out to the greens. What is your protocol when somebody turns yellow? Are you keeping eyes on them? Do you have certain points of outreach? Do you have a certain system? When somebody is red, what is your protocol? Are you scrambling at last minute? Or do you have offers ready to go of how to bring somebody from red to yellow, yellow to green? Are you sending them something in the mail? Are you booking calls with them and really getting curious about why they might be on the fence? We also like to send surprises and delights. That's another metric we have on the dashboard is people love sending gifts in the mail, and I guarantee your competitors are not doing it. And you will stand apart that much more if people feel like they're not just a client, not just a monetary number to you, but actually a member of your community and that you actually care about them as a person. What one thing we like to ask when people become clients is, if you had $20 and could spend it on anything, what would it be? And this might sound like a silly question. I've just joined a group coaching program. I'm trying to get to the serious business aspects. I don't have time to answer your questions about a figurative $20. But the magic of that is in 6 months, when they forget that they answered that, when they became a client, and we send them powdered donuts and Diet Pepsi in the mail, and they're cracking up and telling their spouse, you would not believe what my community just sent me. This is awesome. It's just little touch points like that. And so what I want to iterate here is that retention, yes, it's driven by metrics, it's driven by analytics, it's driven by just business sense. But we cannot forget the human aspect of what makes a community rich and what makes retention rich. We talk a lot about AI within our community as well. We're very pro AI and try to be on the cutting edge as much as possible. And one thing that I think makes us different, people are thinking a lot about defensibility in today's age. And I know a lot of people, some are mildly scared, some are freaking out. And Charles, you know this better than I do because you are directly coaching these people. And I know you hear it in one-on-one sessions. Some people are terrified about AI.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, have you considered community as a marketing channel? Because, and again, we're welcome to open this can of worms, but one thought I've been having, Charles, is community is an element of defensibility in today's age. When AI is so rampant in our society today, in good ways and in bad, again, we're talking in our community all the time about the ways that we're leveraging it to be on the cutting edge and doing the things that our competitors aren't. But the flip side of that, the human side of that, is that I would argue community is a competitive edge and a defensibility in today's age. I'd love to know your thoughts on that too.
The Chinese figured this out many, many years ago with the concept of the yin yang, right? So every positive has an equal and opposite negative. Now, they've been talking about this for thousands of years, but at the end of the day, if you look at the smallest observable molecule, it still has this balance of positive energy and negative energy. And any initiative, anything that you do has a consequence and a reward. Everything, always. This is science. This isn't theory. This isn't sort of this pie in the sky, woo-woo type of, mushroom magic. This is science, right? So there's a consequence and a reward. And so one of the consequences of AI is this lack of authenticity. And so when you look at the more and more people are using AI, whether it's to automate or to create content, you're seeing more and more videos being produced through AI. It comes down to authenticity, and people will be craving more and more and more of that connection, that real raw connection, because they still have emotional needs that need to be met. And so community then allows you to have these authentic connections, human conversations that will create breakthroughs that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get on your own through AI. AI being an incredible thought partner, that's great, but it's only as good as the input. And that input is going to come through the context of your experience, your conversation, your so forth. So as perfect example, in our board of directors session today, there were a lot of things that were discussed. People were throwing in context through an experience that they had that for everyone in the room, they never heard of that before. Like, that's interesting. I never heard of that before. Now you can take that context and that conversation, bring that into an AI brainstorming session to expand that further. But AI would have never told you the answers unless you could have generated the questions through the context of an authentic community. It was like, there's so many different ways that it creates, that it works. And you're right. Community is something that we've been leaning in on more and more and more. And when you think about the case studies and what people tend to love most about the program, it actually does come down to, I love the group that we're in. We're bringing 15 of our members together just a couple weeks, right?
Oh, yeah.
And all 15 of those members, well, they're going to be getting transformational content. If you ask them to rank what's most exciting, it's that they get to see the people that they've been interacting with virtual. They get to see them in person. And there's just going to be, I can tell you right now, there's just going to be a lot of hugs going around.
Oh, yeah. It'll be huge.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be super cool. I can't wait for that. So you're right. When back to the retention, we do know that there's a formula for retention as well. And it's relationships plus results equals retention. And so the results is something that most people follow through on, but the relationships part is where most people are missing. And on the relationships part, there's a secret to the relationships. The secret, and this violates every rule that they teach you in B school. And that is, you have to make business personal.
Ooh.
Because what do they teach in B school? Business is business. It's only business, right? It's only business. It gives you an excuse to be, raw, rude, and and just, it's all business. It's only business. when you make business personal, you really strengthen the relationships. And when people eventually, because there's, business is never a straight line. You get your ups, you get your downs. And anytime, winter is coming, and if they go through this little season, there's this little bit of struggle, or they need to make a big investment, or they lost a big client, sometimes cuts have to be made. When they look at what cuts am I going to make, the cuts that are the hardest, that they don't want to make, that they often will not make, are the ones where they have the strongest relationships with the people that are there. So that is also a really important part.
Yeah. I've heard it said before that people come for the strategy and they stay for the community.
Yeah.
And
true.
I think that could not be more true. And we don't want anyone here to think that we're speaking anything ill of AI. I do think that there are some cases where it's used poorly. At Predictable Profits, we're using AI to give ourselves a competitive edge and teach that to our clients as well, but while also bringing in the community element. So you can have both. You don't have to be totally, anti-AI, living in a cave with no technology and just be human centric. You can have both. And I think there's a way to strike balance in today's age. One good example of that, I'm not sure how much you've talked about this on your podcast, Charles, but I'm sure you all know that Charles is a madman, mad scientist.
Man, they probably know that part.
And he has gone into his laboratory and he has cooked up these incredible proprietary AI bots that are trained on all of our Predictable Profits IP from the past 15 years. And this is something that's available only to our community members, those folks who are in our Launchpad program and our board of directors. But it's funny how this seemingly unhuman element has actually fueled our community a ton. It's funny, Charles programmed these bots, I'll say, to not always be polite. Sometimes they will give you the straightforward, honest truth, that they will tell you if your breath stinks or your website sucks. Oh, people have been posting the funniest results in our community from the responses they're getting from these bots. And so really what we're seeing is a balance of where people can utilize the technology of AI while keeping the human element and having both, and actually creating a dialogue where we're collaborating together and using AI to create a competitive advantage. But we're showing up every week as a community to sharpen each other so that we're just not in a silo. We're not in an echo chamber, just with a chatbot back and forth, but we're striking a balance. And honestly, I would go as far to say, I think the AI bots are a retention mechanism as well.
For sure.
I think there's plenty of people in our community who would not dare leave because getting to chat with Charlie dramatically changes their business. So not sure if you shared that before, but you folks would be amazed at these chatbots.
Do you remember how many people, when I first said, we're going to do this, looked at me like I had two heads? That was insane.
Actually, I think Charles even waited until Joe and I went on vacation at the same time to create these bots, which, by the way, Joe and I have made sure that we will never go on vacation at the same time ever again. But Charles said, wait a minute, I have the perfect opportunity. No, they're amazing.
I did. I'll admit it. I did. But, it's fun. Look, we have a good time together and it's fun. And there's a lot of different places that I'd love to be able to take this conversation, but I know we're pushing up against the clock here. Walker, I'm going to leave you with this question, a question I'd love to ask all our guests. This is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What would you say is your best tip for our listeners who want to take their business beyond seven figures?
That is a very good question. And since we are on the topic of retention, I think I'll keep it there. I think I'll drive home what I said about listening to your clients. And I think Charles said it well when he said that the people who will thrive in today's age of AI, they're not the people with the right answers, they're the people with the right questions. And I think when people approach entrepreneurship, as if they approach it knowing that their preconceived notion of the solution is not always the solution, but rather it's whatever your clients are asking for and how you can deliver that value to them, Charles likes to say, you're not really in the business of whatever it is, XYZ that you're doing. You're actually in the results business.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to stay afloat is to continually have your ear to the ground, listening to your clients, being adaptive, and being able to get creative on how you're delivering those results. Your clients have come to you for a certain reason, and that's to get a certain piece of value. They are a particular persona, they have a particular pain point. And if you listen, they will tell you those pain points. Charles, I know you all also like to say that any sentence that you hear the word problem, you can replace that same word with opportunity, and that sentence remains true. And I think that's the point that we're really trying to drive home here, is that if you keep your ear to the ground, listen to your clients, listen to their problems, which are then the opportunities. If you can drive results for those opportunities, you will stay in business no matter how the waves of the economy flow, whether we're, booming or in a recession, whether it's AI disrupting the landscape or whether it's something else down the line. As long as you keep your ear to the ground, listen to your clients, know that you're in the results business and that you are delivering value for their problems, you are going to adapt and you are going to have a compass for the road forward. So that is what I have to say, Charles.
I love it. And the last, we talked about community. I'm going to give our listeners a URL that they can go to so they can experience community firsthand. Walker, why don't you give a plug for what people can get inside of our free Predictable Profits community?
Yes. So as a free member of our Essentials tier, first of all, you're going to have a lot of fun, but we don't let just anybody in. We have an exciting course where you can unlock the community. When you get in, you'll see a few resources, but as you experience the onboarding, you'll see the entire community open up before your eyes. You'll see live workshops. You'll see a community forum. You'll see a place to share your wins. You'll see tons of free resources. That's some of our board of directors material that we teach on a regular basis to drive results for our members, modules that you can take, strategies that you can implement into your business, and opportunities to show up on live calls and workshop those things with us live in real time. It's a lot of fun. It's a place to meet like-minded people, to meet perhaps you're a B2B service, perhaps you're an agency, perhaps you just want to meet like-minded entrepreneurs. Jump in our community on Circle. Again, well, first of all, I'm going to be there. So
yeah, that's enough of a reason.
At least one cool person. No, we're going to have a lot of fun, but we would urge you, it's free. You have nothing to lose. And if you like to have a good time with like-minded people, this is for you.
Awesome. And you can visit that community at start.predictableprofits.com/community. Again, that is start.predictableprofits.com/community. I'll say it one more time, start.predictableprofits.com/community. You go to that link and you fill out the quick form and we can get you into that community. There's a bunch of resources and whatnot there. Highly, highly recommend. So
I'll give one more quick plug if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
We have just launched a brand new course within our free tier that is our online presence makeover challenge. If you have been meaning to update your LinkedIn, want feedback on your website, you want to beef up your email newsletter, whatever it is that is your online presence, we've developed this challenge that you can compete in our community today. People are posting their results for their before and afters. We want your web presence to resonate with your audience, with your super consumer. And this is your opportunity to do that. So jump into the community, give our digital presence makeover a try, and we think you're going to see amazing results.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. For more tips, strategies, and information to grow your business faster, more predictably, and less dependent on you, check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. And don't forget the community, start.predictableprofits.com/community. This is Charles Godet, my good friend, Walker Renfrow, and I will see you in another episode.